You know, he gained 25 pounds to fight in that fight. Like, he went up 25 pounds, and he still looked really, like really fucking good. I wish I could gain 25 pounds and look fucking good like that. Coming to you pre-tape from the Best Coast Show studios. This is the Best Coast Show. I'm your host, Albert Aguilera. That's my producer, Curtis Stage. And Curtis, the biggest upset of the weekend didn't happen in an octagon.
Oh, yeah, Lakers.
The Lakers actually beat the Warriors.
Wow, I wish I had some money on that.
That was a good money line. That was plus 2,300.
But this is not a Lakers episode.
It's
Albert.
not a Lakers episode.
We're going to talk UFC. This was a big week in UFC. We had the UFC 196 upsets, I guess.
Plural.
I mean, maybe not upsets, but we're going to say upsets. Are upsets bad for business? This is something we want to talk about. Jon Jones returns. And then we got to talk about UFC 197. Let's look to the future and see what's going to be in store for us. So, Albert, let's get started.
Writing out of his bedroom in West Hollywood, California, this man is a journalism major from St. John's University, holding a typing speed of 118 words per minute. He is a former associate sports editor at the New York Post, a former staff writer at Fox Sports, and the undisputed assistant editor at SB Nation's MMAfighting.com. Writing out of West Hollywood, California, by way of New York, Marc the Giant Raimondi. Marc, thanks for coming on the show. Thank you very much. Marc, thanks so much for coming on the show. Appreciate your time here. So, 196, we had a couple of upsets. They weren't huge upsets. They weren't, Holly over Ronda, a minus 2,500 fighter going down. But, explain the situation.
I think that they were not huge upsets in terms of the odds, like, when you look at the sports books, but in terms of how they happened and how it all unfolded, I thought it was almost as stunning as what happened back in November with Holm and Rousey, honestly.
I mean, yeah, you have a guy in Conor McGregor. He's going up 2 weight classes. He's putting on 25 pounds of muscle. Personally, I felt that he won the exchanges for the first 6-7 minutes of the fight, and eventually he takes that left to the face, backs up, and he looked gassed. Mm-hmm. Like, he was just kind of like, what the hell did I get myself into? I'm tired.
Yeah, I think it's a whole different world when you're fighting at that weight. At 145, a lot of times when McGregor faces fellow featherweights, he can knock them out. That left hand is knocked out almost all of his past opponents. At this point, he's made millions of dollars on that left hand. He hit Nate Diaz with that left hand like 75 times, really hard, and Nate Diaz kept moving forward, and McGregor just kept loading up. He wasted so much energy trying to knock out Diaz that he was gassed by the end. Like you said, by the end of that second round, he was done. He was gassed because he was just straining himself to try to knock him out with one punch instead of actually putting combinations together and doing that sort of stuff. So that was really the difference in the fight.
So, Marc, should McGregor even fought Diaz? I mean, this going up that much in weight, was that a smart move for him business-wise? I mean, he's the most popular fighter right now. Everybody loves him. He's made the most money now. This was the most money, right?
Yeah, he's the first reported payout for $1 million in UFC history.
So was this a smart move for him?
Well, I mean, smart move in the sense of he didn't know. I don't think he knew quite what it was to do that. I think he figured, hey, I walk around at about 165, 170 pounds. Wouldn't be a big deal to fight guys that weight. He said before, I train with welterweights in the gym. I spar at them. I do all this, but it's a whole different world when you're actually in the octagon. I think from a sporting perspective, from the actual practice of doing it, he underestimated the significance of that kind of jump in weight. Absolutely, 100% underestimated it. But from a financial perspective, he did something that no one else has done. He took a risk and he lost, but he also made a ton of money. The pay-per-view sales were probably, I don't know the exact numbers, and we will never know the exact numbers, but everything was trending extremely high. It ended up being a really, really huge fight. So, it worked out for him in that sense. I don't think he's any less of a star now because he lost. But in terms of his record, yeah, it'll definitely hurt him. I think that he'll agree that he made a little bit of a tactical error by doing that. But he's the kind of guy that he would probably do it again because I think he just likes to roll the dice, and I think he just likes to do crazy stuff and stuff that no one has ever done before.
And I like Conor McGregor. I think he's a nice guy. I like his fighting style. I like the way he talks. And he goes out.
Wait a minute. I mean, he was talking a lot of smack before this fight.
It doesn't matter, but that's the allure of Conor McGregor is.
Okay.
That's why people like him. That's why I like him. I think he's hilarious. This guy's amazing. So he goes out. He goes up 25 pounds in weight. He talks a lot of shit, and it's fantastic. and he loses, but he doesn't get the media backlash that Ronda Rousey did. Why do you think that happened? I mean, because everybody from late night TV hosts to professional athletes to Donald Trump, all were tweeting negatively towards Ronda Rousey, and not so much Conor McGregor. Only the 209, the Brazilian fans, which was expected, were the ones talking shit.
That's a good point. I think that there's a few reasons why. For one, I think that Rousey was a bigger star than McGregor. Maybe not so much in terms of how much money she draws on pay-per-view, because I think that McGregor is probably drawing as much, if not more, than Rousey has done so far on pay-per-view. But I think in terms of mainstream media, I think Rousey's a bigger star because she has crossed over into Hollywood. You know, we've seen her in movies, you know, big blockbuster movies. We've seen her doing a lot more commercials, a lot more TV shows, a lot more late night, a lot more, you know, morning TV. McGregor has done a little bit of that, but we've never seen him in Entourage. You know, we've never seen him in The Expendables and all the stuff that Rousey has done. So I think that part of it is because Rousey was a bigger star, so it became a bigger deal. I think also a big part of it was that the way they both handled the loss. I think that Rousey handled the loss poorly, and I can't hold that against her because it was a devastating loss, and I don't know how I would have done under those types of conditions. It was a knockout loss. She probably thought that she would win for sure. A lot of people thought she would win. I'm sure she felt like she let a lot of people down, and I'm sure she felt like a lot of her haters were kind of fulfilled by that win. So that sucks, obviously.
Right.
McGregor, you know, came out to the press conference. Rousey didn't come to the press conference. McGregor did every interview that night, you know, every TV interview, everything that they asked of him, he did. Rousey didn't do any of that stuff. And I think that's part of the reason why. And he spoke and he said a lot of insightful things, and he wasn't cocky, he was humble, and he took the loss. He accepted it and you know, he talked about it. And I think that's a big deal. I think that the way you accept the loss and take the loss immediately after does a lot for how the perception is going to be. And Rousey, you know, never gave any credit to Holly Holm. Still really hasn't given that much credit to her. McGregor that night said, "I panicked. You know, Nate did a great job," and he actually said he panicked. The way that he was able to verbalize what happened in that fight was better than anything that Rousey came up with after her fight. She still hasn't really verbalized what happened in that fight in a straightforward manner. So I think that's really why those reasons are why it wasn't there was not that huge backlash. However, I have seen a lot of fans who don't like McGregor take a lot of glee in his loss. So there's that as well.
People are just haters. I mean, you're online all the time. You see the kind of hate that comes from the MMA community. I mean, the FBI got involved during fight week as one fan, you know, took a picture of himself with an AK-47 threatening Conor McGregor, saying, "Hey, listen, we have guns in America. You're talking a lot of shit. That is really dumb. Why would you do stuff like that?" Now, with these upsets, I really appreciate the way that he did. He was very humble with the way that he lost, and he says, "Listen, I'm cocky with my predictions. I'm confident with my training, and I'm humble win or loss." Now, a lot of people are saying, "Hey, Paige Van Zandt lost, and then Rousey lost, then Sage loses, and now McGregor goes down. Is this bad for business? Because you don't have the golden child. George St. Pierre is no longer the guy that's around going for the pay-per-view king. But the return of Jon Jones is in April. Does Jon Jones' stock now shoot through the roof?"
Well, the first point is it bad for business, and I would say yes and no. I would say that the UFC certainly lost something with McGregor losing, because if he wins that fight, he becomes an even bigger star. Then he can go on and fight maybe Robbie Lawler, which I think would have been a bad idea. But there's still those fights available to him. There's still a lot of hype around him. Eventually, he was going to lose, because that's just how it goes in MMA. Eventually, someone loses, and it comes crashing down to an extent. I don't think he lost his fan base all of a sudden because of the loss. I think that people give him credit for the fight that he fought. He dealt Nate Diaz a beating in that fight and then just kind of gassed out. It was an incredibly exciting fight. So I don't think he loses that much, but sure, he's not going to be a bigger star than if he would have beat Diaz. On the women's side, I would argue that, I think that Tate winning is arguably just as big as home winning, because for this reason, now the Rousey Tate rematch was always one that was going to do fairly well at the box office. I think that even with Rousey beating her twice already, I thought that Rousey Tate 3 was still going to do fairly well. But now there's the rivalry, and Miesha has newfound credibility, where there may be fans thinking, well, Rousey's been out. Rousey may not be focused right now completely on MMA. She's doing movies. Miesha Tate has improved immensely since the last time they fought. She is now the champion. So now there's that rivalry. They hate each other. There's that great feud. There's going to be so much trash talk. It's going to be Miesha Tate's already started the trash talk a little bit. And now you have people who may say Miesha Tate might actually have a chance to beat Ronda Rousey. So that fight now becomes, I think, enormous. That's an enormous fight for them. And you still have that Rousey home rematch eventually in some capacity, whether it's Rousey beating Tate and then fighting home in another title fight. And then you also have another home Tate fight eventually down the line too. I see those three, that little triangle there of fighters at the top of that division, being like the female version of Chuck Liddell, Randy Couture, and Tito Ortiz back in the late 2000s, back in the late aughts. I think that could be really successful for business. All of those fights are big, and now there's a whole bunch of those fights coming where every single one of them is a pay-per-view headliner potentially. So I think in that division, things are going great. They may have lost a little bit with McGregor, but I think that the UFC is absolutely fine after this weekend.
No, and especially with the Miesha Tate story was great. I mean, this girl wins 4 in a row after losing that fight. And then Kat Zingano was supposed to, go on and fight. She messes up her knee. Miesha takes over for the Ultimate Fighter. She wins 4 in a row, and then she wakes up to watch Good Morning America because her agent says, or her manager says, hey, we just got blindsided. Holly Holm is now taking your title shot. This woman wanted to retire. She goes out there, and she didn't dominate the fight. I mean, she was losing in the cards going into the 5th round. She got the 10-8 in the second for all 3 cards. But what this girl has is what you didn't see in Ronda. This girl has so much tenacity, and she was smart and patient with her fight. And she would eat shots, and she'd keep going forward, as opposed to Ronda, who would just kind of like jerk, like, oh, I can't believe you touched me. How dare you punch me in the face? And Miesha she hung in there and eventually got the submission. I mean, even if she had won the 5th round, it would have been a tie.
Man, I cannot say enough about that fight. I mean, I think that was, I mean, for sure that was a better fight than McGregor versus Diaz, which was a great fight in its own right. But I think that Holm and Tate got robbed of their fight of the night bonus, to be honest with you. Put it this way, no one in the history of the UFC has come into a title fight as the challenger, been down on the cards, and won the fight in the 5th round by finish. No one has ever done that, ever in the history of the UFC. There's been very few 5th round finishes in the UFC, period, let alone in title fights, let alone by the challenger winning. It's just an amazing historic fight. Tate has so much heart, so much determination. I just can't say enough about her and that fight. And I think that the future is so bright for all of those women, and I'm super excited about what comes next. And the Tate story, I think that, like you said, with her coming back, winning 4 in a row, losses to Rousey, I think people have gotten behind her story. You know what the coolest thing was, man? And when I was there on Saturday night, one of the things that I found was the coolest when I was watching that fight was just how into it the fans were in the arena. The fans were on their feet throughout that fight, going crazy. Now there were lulls in that fight where it wasn't the most exciting fight. It was there was definitely lulls in action. There was a lot of technique, there was a lot of tactical action, but not like all out. It was not a brawl. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because Holly's a counter striker, and Miesha was trying to be methodical as to what she did because she didn't want to get knocked out.
Right, but the fans were into that fight from the very start, and there were some fans chanting Miesha. Then there are other fans that were started saying Holly, and I couldn't help to think that it was really cool because here you have 2 women fighting in front of a male-dominated audience. If there were 16,000 people, I think there was like 14,000 people. If there were 14,000 people there, 10,000 were probably men. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they weren't cheering them on because they were hot chicks. They were cheering them on because they were incredible athletes. It didn't matter if they were men or women in that fight. The fans were super into that fight, regardless of the gender of the participants. And I thought that was really awesome. To me, that was the greatest women's fight in UFC history.
Yeah, it's becoming less of a spectacle, and actually, people I think are appreciating it much, much more. I mean, at first you're like, as a casual fan, maybe they're saying, "Oh, I want to see these girls beat each other up," but now it's like these girls are good. I want to, I want to see a good fight. So that is exciting to see.
Yeah, I don't think people appreciate the women fighters enough. And like, I'll be honest with you, I've talked about it before. Before women came into the UFC, I was 100% in agreement with what Dana White used to say about having women in MMA, because you'd watch them on Elite XC or you'd see them in the Bellator fights, and it was always one girl that knew how to fight against another one that kind of didn't. So it was always one girl getting mauled. But then the UFC went out and they grabbed this talent of the best women on the planet and put them together. And you're like, wow, these women know what they're doing. And the 135 women always bring it. And then you got Joanna and, what she's doing and the trash talking. And she's just an elite level striker. And the women bring it every time. And it's fantastic to see that grow.
Absolutely. It's great for the sport. I think that fight will just open up new doors for women. And then you also have to factor into that division Juliana Pena when she comes back from her little legal issues there. She's going to be right in the mix in that division. And Kat Zingano, we haven't seen her since she lost to Rousey. She lost to Rousey in a very quick fight, 14 seconds. Who knows how that fight would have gone now looking back. Kat Zingano was very good. She's beaten Miesha Tate. So you throw her into that mix, and all of a sudden now, the division that everyone was saying was, oh, it's so thin outside of Rousey. All of a sudden, this division is one of the hottest in the UFC, and how can you not be excited about what the future holds for it?
Yeah, so I guess these upsets were a good thing because they just created a lot of depth.
Yeah. And then you look at Diaz, and every time Nate Diaz fights, it's gonna be a big fight. It's gonna be a pay-per-view main event or a Fox main event. He's going to be getting big name opponents and big money fights from now on.
And I hope he does. I mean, I'm not a fan of Nick or Nate, and it's because I just don't like their fighting style. For me, it was always these guys come out, they drop their hands, they taunt, they flip you off, and then they lose a decision and then complain about why I lost a decision. And I'm sitting there thinking, listen, you should have fought instead of, trash talk. And when Nate came out there, he was hands up the entire time. He never dropped guard. He knew he was literally in the fight of his life because it wasn't a title fight, but it was more important than a title fight because this was going to be a signature fight. Win or lose, that was a signature fight for Nate, and he took it serious the entire way through. And win or lose, I was like, wow, I just gained so much respect for you because you went out there and you legitimately fought and you won.
100%. And I think you're right. I think that in a way, that was way more important than a title fight because Conor McGregor is the biggest star. If he would have fought in, Rafael dos Anjos to win the title, that's great. Nate Diaz is the best, lightweight in the world, but he beat a guy that a lot of people don't know who he is.
Right.
Nate Diaz beat Conor McGregor on a Saturday night in front of what will probably be like a million pay-per-view buy rate. And he's getting all the press now. He's on TMZ. He had the spotlight and he absolutely delivered and he absolutely took that opportunity and he's run with it. And there's only big fights for him now, man, because he is a star now because everyone wants a piece of him. It's crazy beating McGregor like that the way he did and talking shit after saying what he said on the microphone. He is becoming like a cult hero.
Right. And I think that's the following that he and his brother have, being that cult following, that underground following. His brother was very big in Pride, came over, was a Strikeforce champion. So this is kind of cool, too, because he now kind of gets out of the shadow of his brother.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's really cool. And what was really cool? I'm not sure if anyone actually reported this on Saturday night, but Nick was there. He couldn't be in Nate's corner because he's suspended by the Nevada Athletic Commission. So when you're suspended, you can't even be in someone's corner because your license is suspended. But what was really cool was that he was there and he was in the press room, but he turned down pretty much every interview because he said he didn't want to take any of the spotlight away from his brother. Thought that was really awesome. Thought that was really cool because a lot of guys would have just, spoken and maybe, he would have said some crazy quote and it could have gotten blown up and it could have taken a little bit away from Nate, but he wouldn't do any press at all. And I thought that was really great. Those guys are like, I can't imagine two human beings being as close and as bonded as those two guys. It's really great and incredible. I can't imagine two humans being that tight and that close. Those guys are they're almost like Siamese twins, the Diaz brothers.
No, and that's really cool. But that's something that martial artists get together. I remember seeing Road to the Octagon when George St. Pierre was going to fight Nick Diaz, and Nick talked about how growing up in Stockton, he get into MMA and into doing the triathlons to stay away from the gang violence that is up in that area. And his brother just tagged along, and he brought his brother along, and that community, regardless of what people may think of it, has shown them the support, and that's why they have the fan base that they have, and that's why they are as tough as they are. And it's really great that this happened for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, there was it's actually being shared around right now, since the fight on Saturday night, where it's actually an excerpt from an article written by Ben Folks on MMAfighting.com a few years ago about Nate Diaz. And basically, Nate Diaz explains in this article that the only reason why he went to jiu-jitsu when he was a kid was because Nick was going to jiu-jitsu. And at the end of the class, the other guys in the class would take them all out for burritos. And Nate didn't really like jiu-jitsu that much, and he wasn't that good at it, but he knew that he would get dinner if he went to jiu-jitsu class, because he wasn't eating almost all day. His family was dirt poor, he had no money, and the only way that he would really eat that day was to go to jiu-jitsu, and then afterwards his teammates would take him out to have burritos. That's an incredible story.
That's really cool.
Just like, wow,
Yeah, so he's come a long way.
Yeah.
It puts in perspective just, who these guys are and where they come from. And people, they're very misunderstood, where people say, oh, they're cocky and they talk trash. Like, no, man, this is just how it was. This is just how they grew up. I mean, they can't do anything about it. This is not manufactured. This is completely 100% organic, who they are, where they grew up, and what their lives have been like. It doesn't matter if they're in front of 10,000 people or in front of, a few dudes in the gym. This is just how these two guys are.
That's really cool. Yeah, because the way they are, they're real all the time. Now, Mark, UFC 197. I know it's the return of Jon Jones, but I feel Demetrius Johnson does not get enough credit for what he does. He's going to be the co-line of this. Henry Cejudo is the opponent. I mean, Demetrius Johnson, in my opinion, is 1 or 2 in the pound-for-pound fighter list, and he just dominates his opponents. Why does Cejudo even have a shot?
Why does he have a shot? Well, one thing about Henry Cejudo that you can't take away from him is that he is an Olympic gold medalist wrestler, and there haven't been that many of those guys in the UFC. And Demetrius Johnson has never fought anyone with the level of wrestling that Cejudo has. Now, I think Johnson will win. I just think he's a better all-around fighter, of course. But the one thing about DJ is that a lot of what he does is really around his wrestling. And he really uses his wrestling to set up his other stuff. He uses wrestling to set up his hands. He uses wrestling to set up his submissions. So if Cejudo can nullify that, he'll at least have a shot. He'll at least have a chance to put Demetrius game. No one else has been able to even neutralize Demetrius in any possible way. If Cejudo can neutralize one part of his game, which is the wrestling, which theoretically he should, he has a shot to at least win a round here or there. I don't think he's going to win the fight. I just think Demetrius Johnson is too physically gifted. He has too many tools in the tool shed. But sure, he has a chance. And the one thing also about Cejudo that everyone says is that he was an underdog when he was fighting. When he was wrestling in the Olympics, he wasn't supposed to win the gold medal. He actually put together the best stretch of his career toward the gold medal, toward winning that Olympic gold medal. So he's a guy that delivers when the pressure is on. He's never been like an amazing gym wrestler, but when he had a chance to win the Olympic gold medal, he turned it on and he became an elite world-class guy. So maybe that's what we'll see, because we didn't see the best Henry Cejudo in his last few fights. We didn't see the best Henry Cejudo against like Chris Carriazo. But maybe we'll see a new Henry Cejudo against Demetrius Johnson. It's hard to say. It's possible.
And I'm excited because this guy dominates his opponents, and I'd like to see him, go 4 or 5 rounds. And you're right. I think Demetrius Johnson's going to be a little too much for him because he's so athletic, he's so fast, he's so well-rounded. But I hope to see a really great fight there, and that's going to be the co-main for the return of Jon Jones with DC.
It's a great fight. It's a great fight.
So let me ask you this about Jon Jones. He shows up to this presser, the unstoppable presser, and he's got his championship belt with him. DC's got his championship belt. He never officially lost his belt. I mean, I recognize Robbie Lawler as a welterweight champion because George St. Pierre officially retired and walked away from the game. But due to off the field issues, Jon Jones was stripped. Daniel Cormier gets the title. Do you feel that fans acknowledge Daniel Cormier as the official light heavyweight champion, or is Jon Jones still there? Because Jon Jones has beaten him, and people at the presser were not in DC's corner. So Jones, usually the villain is there now, kind of like smiling, dropping these memes, walking around with his belt.
Yeah, I don't think Daniel Cormier is accepted as the true light heavyweight champion. I mean, I think everyone knows that he is the champion. He has the belts, but he's not the best. He's not the best in the division because Jon Jones beat him. It's that simple. And it wasn't that long ago. It was only about a year ago, a little over a year ago, that Jones beat Cormier. It was a close fight early, but I would say that was a pretty complete victory, right? I mean, I think Jon Jones clearly won that fight. There was no controversy. He was the better fighter. And I think people still feel that way. I laughed that day at the press conference on Friday because Cormier was really getting irritated at the fans, man. He was like really upset that they were booing him. They were booing him hard, and they were cheering Jon Jones. What a world, what a world it is that fans will cheer the guy who's coming off a felony hit and run arrest and getting popped for cocaine and all the other things that are involved with Jon Jones. They'll cheer him incredibly and boo Daniel Cormier, family man, good guy, never been in trouble, well-spoken, articulate, does Fox UFC Tonight, an all-around good guy gets booed. But that's MMA, and I think that, and that's cool, and there's nothing wrong with that. Jon Jones is going to come back next month, and he is going to be bigger in terms of, well, probably physical size, but also bigger in terms of popularity than he ever was before. Because it doesn't matter what you do in MMA outside the octagon. If you are who you are, and you act the way that you actually are in real life as a person, you will do well. Jon Jones has a big personality that he was suppressing before. He was kind of talking about how he was a good Christian, and you know what I mean. He was kind of phony. People saw through that from day one.
I mean, that's what DC's always saying about him, that he is a phony.
And yeah, and for sure. And now, yes, I mean, maybe some of the things he's saying about being rehabilitated is BS. That's possible. But what Jon Jones is doing with Cormier and like you said, the memes and bringing out the belt, that is who Jon Jones really is. He is a jerk. And that's awesome. That is fucking great. It's hilarious. These guys fight in a cage for money. You don't have to be a sweetheart. You don't have to be a great guy. Jon Jones may not be a great guy. He's a fucking great, I'm sorry, he's an incredibly great fighter. Sorry for my blue language, but I'm very passionate about this topic. And the dude is a star. He's a superstar. He's the best fighter in the world. He's a badass. There's no reason why he shouldn't have a huge fan base.
Yeah. Awesome. So you expect Jon Jones to officially become the champion again in April?
I do. I mean, I think that Jones will win, but there are so many variables. There's a lot of question marks, and that makes this fight big because we don't know what Jon Jones is going to be 100%. We haven't seen him in over a year. He's been away. He's had these legal issues. We're not 100% sure where his head is at. Now, I'm willing to bet that he's super motivated for this fight against Cormier to get his belt back. But who knows with him? Who knows? That's why the fight is so intriguing. Cormier, he did very well in the early rounds in that last fight. You can make the argument that he had like an adrenaline dump because there was so much emotion going into that fight. Maybe that doesn't happen again. Maybe he's okay. Maybe he's good. Maybe he takes a little bit more of a laid back approach to this fight. I don't know. It's a great fight. It should do big numbers. I'm hoping it does well because it really is it's an elite. It's a battle of elite fighters with a grudge. Everything, it has everything. It really has a little bit of everything for fans. So I think it's going to do real well.
Awesome. I'm so excited for that. But now we got to do the gift of the day.
Yeah, Mark, thanks so much for being on the show. We are going to have our gift of the day to end the show. What is it, Albert?
All right, guys, our gift of the day, we're going to stay with a rear naked choke submission theme that we're going. Dave Gardner gets submitted by rear naked choke because he decides to stop fighting in the middle of a fight. Why would you do that? I mean, remember how we talked about fans in Japan don't cheer during the fight, so it's a little eerie? Well, he took time to say hello to Japan and immediately got submitted. Like, what are you doing? This guy's a trained fighter. The guy that you're fighting is a trained fighter. Why would you stop? Why would you drop guard to just get beat up? Whatever. Anyways, guys, Mark, thank you very much for coming on the show. Don't forget to stalk Mark on Twitter. It's at Marc_Raimondi. Don't forget to stalk us at Besco Show. Hit the subscribe button, and you guys have a good night.